Well, real quick, if you've been following any of the announcements on Instagram, you've probably seen some of the faces. You probably recognize some of the names, but I want to go ahead and introduce everybody who's here with us this evening. First off, I've got Neil Zimmerman with us from Christ Fellowship down in Florida. Next to him, we've got Walter Wilson from Corpus Christi, Texas. And next to him, we have Griffin McCravey from Church of the Highlands, Birmingham, Alabama. So, guys, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really do appreciate it. So, with that, Neil, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about kind of what you do at Christ Fellowship?
Yeah, absolutely. This is exciting, guys. We're all on a podcast together. Very cool. My name is Neil Zimmerman. I'm the engineering director at Christ Fellowship Church. We're a multi-site church down in South Florida. We've got 14 campus locations. As the engineering director, I get to look after signals and systems for everything we do as an organization. So streaming between campuses, streaming out to web, and really production systems in general. And I get to support a killer team down there and make things work and fix things when they're broke, which happens, more often than you think. So, Walter?
Yeah, so man, super excited to be here. Really honored to do this. So my name is Walter. I'm with Church Unlimited down in South Texas. I'm the lead production director, and so I get to do the same thing. Everything that has a wire to it kind of falls under us. So we do a little IT, little lighting, little staging, little bit of everything.
Just a little bit of IT, though.
Just a little bit of IT. Just a little bit.
Hashtag not the IT guy.
Not the IT guy. Well, yeah, I am Griffin McCravey. Super excited to be sitting with y'all. I'm at Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama, and I am the broadcast lighting director there. So we're a multi-site church in Alabama and Georgia. And so I really am kind of overseeing and handling with another guy on the team all things lighting for all of our locations, as well as our broadcast campus that we have a satellite feed coming out of on the weekend. So I just get to flash lights at people, basically. It's great.
Amazing.
The fun part of the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's awesome. Cool. Well, as we dive in tonight, I just want the four of us to sit here and kind of have a conversation. Obviously, as questions come in, we'll be able to see them. They'll be fed to us as you guys have stuff come up. Please drop those in the chat there in YouTube. For anybody who's watching on Instagram, unfortunately, we can't see your questions if you post them on Instagram. We love that you're there and love that you're able to watch and join us. But if you do have a question, pop over to YouTube and throw it into the chat there so we can actually get to see it. So with that, I have a question that I want to start with, completely unrelated to production, maybe. What is your favorite podcast? You said podcast earlier. I love that. What is your favorite podcast that you like to listen to?
Ooh.
And why?
I'll go first. I've got one.
So
there's a podcast called The Operator with Rob O'Neill. So he was a Navy SEAL. He was actually part of the team that took down Osama bin Laden. And so his podcast, he really talks about like excellence and systems and structure, and actually a lot of things that really kind of connect in a weird way into what we do, and like live events, and like when it's time for something to happen, like it's going to happen, like whether you're ready for it or not, it's coming. And so he just has some really great advice. Of his viewpoint of it is basically like it's going to happen, so you just do your best to get ready for it and be trained and ready for it.
That rings really true in this moment right now.
Yeah.
When the thunderstorms broke loose just an hour and a half before we were supposed to start, and somehow we were able to get this entire studio moved from two floors up down here. So, Walter, Neil.
Well, I'm going to go a different direction. So
Okay.
I've got one called Hidden Brain that I listen to. I love to get just like random bits of knowledge. It's not helpful unless you're doing trivia, but every once in a while you get a little nugget there that'll kind of like open your mind up to something new. So I like to it kind of falls into production because you sometimes hear something that gives you a new idea, but sure, generally just some fun nuggets.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's solid. I'm very blessed in that I have a short drive to work, so I'm not a huge podcast guy, but I do. I really enjoy the Morning Brew Daily podcast, which is just kind of like a mix of just general news and tech updates from the day. And they release it every single day, so it's like my 15-minute drive to work. By the time I get to work, I know like a thing or two that's going on in the world, and I'm like, yeah,
try to stay a little up to date in the world, right?
Yeah.
I know what's happening, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
Enough for conversation.
Sort
yeah,
of.
exactly.
I can actually join in conversation at work today. So.
Yeah. What about
Awesome.
you, Chris?
Oh gosh, podcast wise, not far off from the operator.
Yeah.
Sean Ryan is one that I really
yeah. I was
love
gonna
to
say
listen
that. It's
to.
a great one.
Great. I just love the storytelling.
Yeah.
And getting to to find out kind of the origin stories of where these folks started from, even as kids and growing up. And they're long episodes. I mean, we're talking a couple hours on some of them, but they're so
they're like
really
3-4 hour episodes, but
long.
they
They're
are
really long. But it is
great.
it's so engaging. It just keeps you tied in there. So,
and for those of us that have 15-minute drives, I watch it, but it takes me about a week to listen to it. So I just listen to it in chunks. So
not the
little
4 times.
tip for you.
Nobody does like 2 times speed or 4 times speed.
I can't
time
do
and a
it.
half
I can't do it.
Time and a half.
audiobooks and podcast time and a half.
I can't do it.
Ah,
I
Stresses me
can't
out.
do it. Yeah,
it kind of
exactly.
makes me uncomfortable. It's like stressful.
And maybe I'm just like, I got to get through this. I want to get to the end to get it done. So
Yeah.
cool. Obviously, all three of you have been in church production for some time. Things break, things go wrong. What's one of your, not like catastrophic bad kind of scary story, but like what's like one of your favorite like production nightmare things that you can look at the time you might have been pulling your hair out, but now you look back on it and kind of laugh about it?
I'll go first with this one.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I had one, but I didn't want to go first.
I mean, I'm sure we
gonna
all
be
have
honest.
like laundry lists of these, right?
Yeah.
So it was Christmas and a mic goes out and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And I did not communicate to front of house that I'm working on a mic. And so I get it working. And in the mic, I go, check, check, check. And it goes through the house in the middle of Christmas service. And I was maybe 22. Like I was young and just so, I still think about it sometimes.
Going off of Christmas. So I moved into the LD position, started kind of running services at the main campus. I've been, doing it along with a team for several years, but it got to the point where like I was kind of programming everything, running everything. And it was one of my first Christmases to like be in charge. So I'm like nervous. I'm like 22, something like that. So it was like terrifying. We have like 14,000 Christmas services. It feels like it's usually somewhere between like 10 to 14, but it feels like a lot more than that. And so we probably make it to service 7 or 8. So we're like 2 or 3 days in. And I copy the sequence to a new fader because we're not going to have a element one night because of someone who's unable to be there. Right. Self-explanatory, like sounds easy. It was my first Christmas doing SMPTE, like locking everything to time code. I've got it dialed in. It all looks great. I just didn't know that when you copy a sequence, SMPTE still listens to the old sequence.
Oh no.
So we hit the end of our countdown, we go into the start of the show, and the first like song is this like piano opener thing, and it's this like big piano melody, and then it hit. Well, this Viper is supposed to turn on and do like a spinning gobo on the piano. Well, it never turns on like when the guy starts playing the piano. And, by service 7 or 8, I'm kind of sitting in front of the house like, yeah, it looks good. And then I'm like, oh, no Viper. Oh, no Viper. Oh, no Viper. And I like look down at my cue list and I realize the one that's I don't need is running and the one that I do need's not running. So just like in the chaos, I'm just like trying to figure out how to like turn one off and turn the other on. I offed off, which if you know anything about MA, that turns
That's bad.
everything off. And so, yeah.
Wow.
But I'm here.
And of course it's Christmas, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I find out later it was the one with the most people in it too. So that was fine.
Of course it was.
Yeah,
Of course it was.
Yeah, it's fine.
So those moments are always really humbling.
Oh,
it's
man.
like, oh yeah. I'm stuck between 2 stories and both are mortifying, but I think I had a very similar experience to the one you had shared, Walter. So it was my very first like church tech job. I was like 19 years old and I was working for a kind of medium-sized church in the college town I was in at the time, just kind of helping out. And they had an old Yamaha DM2000, which if you've ever sat in front of a DM2, like it's not the most intuitive desk ever.
No.
And one of the things specifically that I always didn't like about it is if you were mixing in an aux, nothing on the desk indicated that.
You were in it.
Like
Your main
select
layer.
the aux. And like it, most desks nowadays like blink at you or something.
Something.
The DM2 did nothing.
It
was
just
like
offers no help.
this-
It's
you
like,
should
You
That's
should
where
know
you
you're
are.
a professional, right?
And so like it was really easy to end up in the wrong spot on the desk.
Oh no.
And we were in a Sunday morning service and my audio engineer had called out like that morning. So I had to jump in and mix. And I for whatever reason, our talkback mic was dead. So I'd taken one of our handheld mics and like made it into a talkback.
Look at you,
yeah,
just
I
solving
love it.
problems.
I was trying. I was
You're
really
just
trying.
solving problems.
Anyway, we like got to the end of the service and the band is loading in behind our pastor. And I went to tell them like, hey, you're hot in the house. And I thought I was in an aux. And I wasn't.
And you were hot in the house.
So the pastor is praying and I just go, you're hot. Into the PA while he's praying.
Oh,
And then immediately just panic and muted it.
you're hot.
And I would just like, I remember just like crumbling behind the console. I just wanted to die. Like I was so embarrassed. But that was pretty brutal.
Oh man.
Yeah, good
Chris,
times.
follow that up.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
man.
go ahead, Chris.
That's a pretty good one. That's a good one.
Tell us your best.
Wow, jeez. I can't. I don't know if I can top calling the pastor hot in the middle of a prayer, guys.
In the prayer too, not
Yeah,
even like
that's-
in a
that's-
song.
Yeah,
right?
like I'm
It's
getting
like-
goosebumps reliving
For
that.
all
That
of
was
us in
pretty brutal.
church, like production work, you realize that's a low blow. Like anything that happens during the salvation moment, you're like, that just is a tough loss.
I'm so
I'm going
fired.
home now.
Yeah,
I'm going
I'm
home.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna go like do something else. I'm out of
For a
production.
living.
Yeah.
For a
For
living,
the rest of my life. I'm never touching this again. So, well, it sounds like we've got some questions coming in on the chat. So, Daryl, do you want to throw that first one up there? Daniel Q. Page from Texas. Hey, man, how often do y'all refresh your stage space and look, and what drives the refresh? So, new designs, new stage looks, that kind of stuff. Do you guys do that on a schedule? Is it like every 3 months you're doing it? Is it right before Christmas or Easter? What does that look like, and what's
Yeah, I mean, I can hop in. I mean, for us, it was very seasonal for a long time. So it was like we would do 3 a year. They'd be planned out. We would know when they were going to happen. And then, there's a part of me that hates like having to bring it up sometimes, but COVID happened. And so post COVID, when we were trying to get back into like, what does that look like? What does it look like as far as schedule goes? Things like that. We now kind of do twice a year, usually Christmas and then Easter is what we've kind of gotten it down to. There's some other ministries, other areas where we've realized our time could be better spent sometimes making some of those areas better and kind of helping other ministries within the church. And so we're kind of more in like a supportive role, I guess, right now, as opposed to like just like refresh as much as we can. But it kind of came about naturally, honestly. I don't know if y'all had anything similar.
Yeah,
happen.
I think that's kind of natural with a lot of churches now, especially big LED wall, big screen in the back, to use kind of more of a graphics package to do more of a refresh. I mean, we're saying like Easter, Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Like those are your Super Bowls. You're all in, you're doing whatever it takes. We've gotten back recently to doing more like physical builds on stage.
Really?
So like for Easter, we took our LED wall and actually built arches physically in front of it to kind of like use that video element, but bring like a physical element in to give you more of that like almost like a throwback to the theatrical days.
Yeah.
Or
Like,
actual sets.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we had been doing so much video stuff for a long time that this gives it, something fresh, something new that's actually old, but it feels new again.
Yeah, that's cool. That's come up a lot for us is like, what would it look like to go back to being a little more practical with stuff?
Yeah.
That's interesting that you all kind of gone that route.
Can I brag on Walter for a second? Because
You don't have
No.
to. But,
shut down real quick. So, Walter, you guys have built some of the like coolest like stage sets and props over
Yeah.
the years.
Yep.
Can you like just spend a minute and tell us about your absolute favorite, and please let it be the roller coaster?
it's
Please
not
let
the
it be
roller
the
coaster.
roller
but
coaster.
It is the one I'm
Oh,
known
sad.
for. I'll tell that one quickly. And I
Okay.
actually do have a favorite. So,
You go for it.
yeah, Pastor had been asking for years for a roller coaster on stage. And so I just start, beating the phones. And I talked to one company and say, hey, can I put a loop on stage? And they laughed at me. I said, okay. So I don't get it. But we found a kiddie coaster in China that we were
kiddie
able.
coaster.
Yeah, but we basically we wrapped it around the LED wall. So like as Pastor was sitting in the roller coaster and went behind the LED wall, we played footage of like a real roller coaster, and then he came out the other side. So we kind of like faked. It was fun. It was definitely.
I'm just trying to
Definitely new.
imagine where that would land in our service flow.
When you get a roller coaster, it is the service
Yeah,
flow.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like we have this thing for 4 weeks. We're getting everything we can out of it.
Milk it for everything.
Absolutely.
So, what was your favorite if it wasn't the roller coaster?
So we do at the movies every year, and we
Okay.
go pretty hard. We talked about like building practical things. So our builds are pretty giant.
For the people at home, spend 2 minutes explaining at the movies.
Yeah. So At the Movies is basically a sermon series where we take clips of movies and pastor kind of talks about the biblical tie-ins to the movie clips. But part of what we do is we take our atrium and turn it into Disneyland. I mean, we just have all sorts of physical props, like kids can climb on them and touch them and really make it interactive. And my favorite that we did, last year we did Mario, and we built a castle that was 26 feet tall and like 40 feet wide, had 2 columns on each side, actual spires, stained glass window that lit up in the back. It was
Wow.
It was
That's
one of my
awesome.
favorite things that we did. I have no idea what we're going to do with it now because it takes up an entire storage room, but it was awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see some pictures of that when this is done.
What about our Christ Fellowship? What's that look like for you guys there?
So I think Griff, we've taken a similar path to you, and
Yeah.
I think the world of church production has changed, right? Because video as a set has become such an integral part of what we do nowadays. Whereas, when we started doing this, that wasn't an option. So you had to build a hard set, and the only way to refresh it was with lighting or with physically changing out the set.
Yep.
And so I think for us, like there was a long time where, we were constantly churning sets and trying to figure out how to refresh stuff and paint it a new color and all of that. And we kind of now have a base look for our campuses we can change with some lighting and do some creative stuff, but it doesn't change super often. And then really, I think, we'll change our broadcast location maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And it's usually for a Christmas and Easter, or if we're hosting like a special event or something like that.
No.
Gotcha. Very cool. Awesome. Michelle has asked, what's your advice for leading well through staff and leadership transitions? We know it takes people to do what we do. We can't do it on our own. We've got to have the teams around us. So how do you guys lead well, especially through leadership transitions? Man, we're getting in fast.
That's a
good question.
good one. That's a good one. Well, I think it depends on, is it staff left to right of you, or is it leadership above you? Those are almost like 2 different issues, right?
Yeah.
So how would you approach them differently?
So like if it were staff that I was leading to my left and right, so like we get a new department head that's maybe a partner ministry, but not one that I am directly in, my goal is to be as supportive as possible.
Yeah.
So how can I go above and beyond to make this person feel supported? Especially, we know like when you start a new position, it's probably 3 months to feel like you can breathe, 6 months to feel like you can paddle water, and a year before you really feel like your feet are under you.
Yeah.
So I think it's so often we hire people and expect in 2 weeks they're rolling,
Right.
but that's kind of not a fair expectation to put on our
Yeah.
teammates.
Yeah. It can be a hard transition. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've realized just in the years of working in ministry is that people who are in ministry are still just people. So if you try to place like everything that you think the ministry needs to be on, someone, a lot of times you'll get let down, just to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for yourself as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I think too, like so often, I know it's the case for me and what I do, but I think so often too, we end up in situations where you end up needing to lead up.
Yeah.
Right. Like in my organization, I hold a lot of the technical knowledge, and part of my role is holding that with humility
Yeah.
and being able to help a leader above me understand the context of what's going on, and make a good informed decision. And so when there's transition above me, that can almost be harder than, when it's a lateral position. Because it's one thing
Definitely.
to train somebody who works for you or with you to do your job. You can be very direct and you can go like, hey, this is how it goes. Here are the things you need. Here's a checklist.
Yeah.
But when somebody above you changes and maybe doesn't have that same technical knowledge that the person before you did, that can be a really interesting thing to try and navigate.
Yeah.
From a place of, hey, I want to help. I have a lot of knowledge here I can offer you. What's the question that I found to ask is, how can I be most helpful? Like, what information can I give you that's most helpful without overwhelming you? I have a really bad tendency to over explain things. And so, I have to pause and go, what's most helpful? And
Yeah.
that's,
And I want to give a really practical step on that. You talked about helping lead up with that technical knowledge. If you feel like there's things that need to change in the organization, like make a real plan for that, right? Like actually put it on paper, have a budget, have a plan in it place. Because when you just say, I want to do a stage design, like what does that mean?
Yeah,
right?
have a solution.
Tangibles to that, right?
Yeah.
So bringing solutions, not problems.
We've always said exactly that. It's like, if it's okay to challenge the process of how we do things, but let's not like challenge each other and like your own abilities. So like, especially when you're leading like laterally, and even when you're leading vertically too, like be willing to give up your own way of doing things, as well as like be willing to kind of be flexible with those around you, and not just be like, no, like this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. Leading people is fun.
Yeah, it's the thing we didn't know we were going to do when we got into tech.
Yeah, I thought I was just
lead
going to
people.
flash the lights, to be honest.
Right. There's maybe
Next
pushing
thing I
buttons
know-
and making cool stuff happen.
Yeah.
And then there's leading teams.
Yeah.
So awesome. Cool. Well, guys, thanks so much. Real quick, if you have questions, make sure you're getting those in the chat so we can get those here and get those answered for you. We're going to go ahead and take a real short break. Daryl, I'm going to toss it back over to you and let you talk a little bit about Thought Leader.
All right. Thanks, guys. Man, what a great conversation so far. So Thought Leader, although we are here doing this event and we have some other content, that's not what Thought Leader is about. Thought Leader was something about 4 years ago, maybe almost 5 years ago, that we wanted to create an environment where church production people could connect, could share, collaborate ideas, and just build community. And so that's what Thought Leader is about. Want to encourage you to take a look at, I'll throw it up in a little bit, our website to check it out if you're not familiar with it. But I could sit here and talk about it, but I would rather you hear from some of our leaders and the people that are involved with Thought Leader on some of the things that they've experienced as part of their time in Thought Leader.
Jump in both feet. You're not going to be disappointed. It's a group of other individuals just like yourself.
If I had a friend considering joining Thought Leader, I would really ask them why they're stuck at the considering point.
Thought Leader is a tribe of people who are passionate about leading well.
The one thing that I value about my experience so far with Thought Leader is intentional relationships and conversations with people who are going through the same struggles I'm going through, that we can share how to get through things together and grow together.
It's a really amazing opportunity to meet like-minded people who really care, and we're all going after the same thing, to have people be impacted.
Thought Leader to me would be community and just like a resource.
What I value most about being in Thought Leader is really the consistent community.
Thought Leaders has impacted my leadership style by being able to learn from others how to be a healthy leader so that I can lead our team in a healthy way.
I have learned to think about the people first, gear second. If the people are good, if the people are pastored well and stewarded well, everything else will fall into place.
If you value your health as a leader and your team and the way that they grow, to take the time that it takes to invest in these relationships is so worth it.
Beforehand, I might have tunnel vision, blinders on, you could say, from just things that I maybe wasn't able to connect with for various reasons, but hearing it from other leaders, having those conversations back and forth has opened up my view and allowed me to correct some things in my own ministry that has really taken it to the next level.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Being in this group, being in this community has definitely shaped the trajectory of how I operate.
All Thought Leaders does is bring that potential to the surface. It helps you grow more and more, and it's free. So why wouldn't you do it? You have nothing to lose.
If I had one word to describe Thought Leader with, it would be community.
Life-giving.
Community.
It's encouraging.
Intentional.
Community.
Trusting.
Engaging.
I'm going to give you 3 words: church, production, family.
If people aren't aware of Thought Leader or what Thought Leader is, they need to know about it. They need to be part of it. We call it mentor circles because it's everybody that's, you know, is kind of mentoring everybody. And so like we'll ask a question and you get 20 different perspectives on it because we all have the same questions. And you can learn some of people are a little bit further ahead in their journey and have some more solutions. And you're probably a little bit further ahead than other people. It is a community that literally thinks like you do. You know, you might be at your church and you're the only production guy and you feel like you're alone or you're like you're the weirdo or the socially awkward one. And you probably are. We love you. Come be part of the community and you'll become better and your craft, better as a person, better as a leader, and better as a teammate.
All right. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we have to offer here in the Thought Leader Conversation. If you're interested, please take a look. Our website, I'll put it up in a little bit, but it's tl-connect.com. Now, if you're just joining the stream, this is an AMA style. Ask me anything. We need your questions in the chat. If you don't put the questions in the chat, we don't know how to respond. We don't know what information to give to you. So with that being said, we do have some questions stacked up. We're going to throw it back to the main stage here in a second. One thing I forgot to do earlier is when you do post in the chat, if you can put your name, where you're at, your location, and then your question, that would be super helpful. We'd love to know where these questions are coming in from. So with that, Chris, we're going to throw it back to you and the fellas.
Awesome. Great. Well, let's go ahead and just keep going through this list of questions. I think that'll be the best thing to do here, Daryl. So Sean asks at your church, who's in charge of stage design from concept to execution, tech, communications, worship, other departments, creative services, that kind of stuff. So who wants to tackle that one?
It's probably different at every church in the country.
Probably a little different for everybody.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it very fluidly changed. So we started out with a lighting department within our production team that essentially was doing all of our stage designs, all of the lighting for it, all that kind of stuff. Years go by, that person who's the LD actually moved into a creative role. So our in-house creative team. So he kind of took on the stage design. We call him the what is his title? It's a really great church title. It's the Creative Director of Experience.
That's the churchiest title I've heard in a while.
Yeah, I warned you that it was a churchy title. But so essentially he is kind of both in the weeds and at 5,000 feet of deciding like, what does Highlands look like? When you walk into a service, when you walk into a lobby, you know, what does it feel like? What does it look like? And then that also translates into stage designs and all that kind of stuff. So for us, he kind of starts those things. And then from there, it really comes down to the teams that are going to execute it. So he'll send us drawings, you know, Vectorworks files, things like that. Just software that we use to do different designs and all that kind of good, fun stuff. And so it'll come to us. We'll kind of implement it, put it in, you know, if it's lobby signage, he'll get with our vendors and, you know, communicate with them on what he wants printed and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an interesting workflow for us that's happened like just literally from people kind of moving around.
Yeah. So ours is a little different. So our leadership team is really visually oriented. So almost everything I make, I need to have pictures to present to them. So like explaining something just doesn't work, right? Like we've tried it and there's a miscommunication. It doesn't land right. So generally the leadership team will actually work with our creative team first to come up with a graphics package. And that kind of drives everything else. So once we have kind of a look and feel, then we'll take that and try to pull something physical out of it. From there, it goes to me. I actually work in Google SketchUp. So for those of you that want to do 3D rendering, but are looking for something a little more manageable or a little easier to get into, Google SketchUp's really great. But I still do all of our 3D rendering. I'll get even down to like drawing the 1x4s so I can get my cut lists out of there. So you can really like dig in deep in there. From there, I have a team of some carpenters and welders that a lot of them are volunteers. And so I'll kind of take the visual that's been approved, take it to the team, and we'll start figuring out how to construct it. But that's kind of stage design. Yeah. Lighting's a little different. Me and my lighting director will work through that. Yeah. But yeah, really once we start with that graphics package, it kind of goes through production. And in our context, production kind of does everything physical on the stage.
Yeah, that's really interesting that like for us, we started, it feels like model and then fit things to the model. Whereas you look at like content and then make a model to fit the content almost. It's very interesting how it's almost flip flop.
Like that Easter stage I talked about, we literally took the exact Pantone of the graphic and matched the paint to that. So instead of the other direction, we matched the paint to the Pantone.
That's like just opposite of how we would think. I mean, it's not like better or worse.
Yeah.
It's just like opposite of what we would do. That's kind of crazy.
Well, it's really that physical creative model process that helps us actually nail that down. So we have those images. The other thing we get a lot of is like, I don't know if this happens to you guys. I get a lot of Pinterest pictures. I saw this on Pinterest. Can we make this?
Mood board.
And then I do a lot of reverse engineering from Pinterest pictures. It's a good time.
Solid.
Right.
I think for us, what's interesting is it's kind of a healthy mix of like what both of you
a little
do.
bit of us, a little bit of them.
So like I think there have been events where we've like started with a graphics package, right? And it's been like, hey, here's the like Christmas, I think is one of those where it's like, here's the Christmas title slide. How do we build from here? And there are totally other events where, so like camp, I think for us is a great example of where they go like, hey, we have a budget.
Yeah.
Come up with something really cool and send us a render, right? And
that sounds like camp. Yeah.
I think our guys love both. Like they love starting with really great creative inspiration, but I think it's also a lot of fun to work with a blank canvas sometimes.
For sure.
But I mean, depending on the event, we'll do, both of those, which is kind of cool.
And it really matters who the vision leader for that is, right? So like if the vision leader is very visual, then you can make sure there's a visual model. If they're maybe a little more abstract, you can start with something like a model. So it's probably dependent on the department as well.
And honestly, like I've learned the hard way about that. Like I've rubbed people the wrong way or not communicated something well because I didn't visualize something to someone who was visual, or I didn't specify like details to someone who's detail based. And I like learned the hard way, honestly. You get like frustrated and like you get kind of angry at each other and like a little like tensions rise. And it's like, I don't know what you like. I don't know how you want me to explain what I'm trying to explain. Like in my head, it makes sense. Why can't you just like see what I'm thinking, And that's a really great point.
Did either of you have any drafting experience before you started working in the church?
Zero.
I took a Google SketchUp, not even a Google SketchUp class. I took a Missy class in high school where one of the segments was Google SketchUp. And I was still an intern and I went, I think I could like build that. And then that was like my job. Yeah. Like I just kind of pitched it out. I was like, this is kind of cool. And now it's like the way we do everything.
Because I feel like what you just described is kind of like anyone who's done anything creative in church like has like taken up learning to draw and model things because they've ended up in that situation where they've frustrated or upset somebody. That story resonates with me big time.
I was just like, just tell me what you want. What do you want to hear? Like, what do you want to see? Like, I'll do it. I just like, help me.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you're modeling, you can really take that and break it down to the pieces. And that's where it gets like really applicable, right? So you can not just communicate the vision, but also like your parts list, your budget, your what it's going to take to do it, because you can see it and measure and everything before you actually do it.
It makes the whole rest of the project way easier because you now have a plan you can work from.
Absolutely.
Huge.
Hey guys, we actually have a great question that just tacks right in there. I'm going to throw it up here from Brother Drew.
Brother Drew, hey man, with the investment it takes to buy gear these days, how do you decide what's best for your ministry? Furthermore, how do you show leadership how the investment will impact the ministry?
Ooh,
that is
a good question.
There's a lot of ways to answer that.
I have an answer to this that's not actually how do you pick gear, but something we learned is a big part of helping your leadership buy gear is being a good steward of the gear you already have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. It's like kind of a tough topic sometimes, right? But like I know for a season we weren't the best stewards, and so they were like, "Why am I going to invest in something when you're not taking care of what you have?" And so then once we started doing that, then we could say, "Let's buy cornerstone pieces." and we can build around that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that. The other thing that we say to our team fairly regularly is, I think a lot of people assume that the word stewardship means saving money. And I think in a lot of cases, good stewardship actually looks like spending money wisely.
Say it louder.
Right. So I think you picked on a great, like buying a great cornerstone piece of gear, understanding, where to make a foundational investment for your ministry versus like immediately going out and buying something that like looks cool. Right.
And the hard part is in production or tech, there's always like the new cool piece of the week, right? Like this mic, this capsule is going to solve my ministry. This is the problem. It's not. There'll be something else next week. So like for us, post COVID, right? Yep. Cameras and console for video switcher was a big one, and we invested pretty heavily in that. But that was it probably took us about a year to make the decision, to research it thoroughly, meet with vendors, and so part of showing that stewardship is being diligent with your research process. Don't just like hit the top 10 video switchers BuzzFeed list, right? Like really dig in, because I see a lot of times people buy stuff and it's good, but it's maybe not the best thing for them. And there's a lot of gear out there.
Yeah. I mean, and it kind of ties in to what you were saying about like, it doesn't always make sense to like spending money wisely doesn't mean saving everything you have, but it means spending it well.
Yeah.
I would also say like, when you spend money well, prove it. And that's kind of like a pointed statement, but like within our organization, like we know that we're one of the bigger spending departments. I mean, LED walls, lights, PAs, consoles, like we are one of the largest spending departments in our organization, but we also have budgets and spreadsheets and 5-year plans and 10-year plans for gear. And I mean, when other departments look at like our spending stuff, like intercompany departments will literally take our own spreadsheets within our own company and like use what we were doing because they're like, production has one that works so well. So it's like not just spending the money well and spending it wisely. And it sounds pointed, like I said, but like proving that you did. Like, no, we have a plan for 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road and how this gear is still going to help us in the future.
And not just the 5-year plan, but like when your church invests in something, right? Like it's not just the technology, but making sure you are using it to its full capacity.
Yeah.
I think that's something we struggled with. So we bought the switcher, and like when there's an investment, there's an expectation that your work process changes with the equipment. You can't buy new stuff and did what you did yesterday.
I think, that was a really, really good point. Sorry, I had to kind of chew on that one
Neil's just processing for a second.
There's a lot of gold going on here. I think, one of the things that you had said, before we went live was like just squeezing every drop out of, a piece of a gear. And I think part of that as church tech staff, we have a responsibility to know what the gear does and know how to squeeze every bit of potential out of that. And I think a lot of times people buy gear or an integrator recommends a piece of gear and nobody at the church really knows why or what they need. They're just hearing this is the piece of gear they need.
Yeah.
And that's always a really sad thing to watch unfold.
And can I tell you something that I just can't stand?
Yeah, hit me.
When people will reach out and be like, hey, what hazer do you have? I don't like that question.
It's the hazer you need for your room.
It's the hazer that I need for my room, and here's why. So like when people will ask me the question of, hey, what hazer do you have? I'm like, no, I'll tell you, but first ask me why I got it or what problem it was solving.
Yep.
It just, man.
And even with that, I think people don't realize like other churches want to help other churches, right? Like we don't get as many phone calls as people think we do. And so like shoot the message and go like, hey, why? And also, do you have a recommendation for my room? Because I promise we have a lot of opinions.
Well, we call each other. Nobody's sitting here. Like we talk all the time about like, hey, how are you solving this? Because I
sent these guys a text like a month ago going like, help. Help. I made a mistake and I need a piece of gear.
Yeah.
And I got like 4 recommendations, but then we did a great job of like breaking down like, here's what this one does well. Here's what this one does well.
Yeah.
Here's what this one's terrible at.
Yeah.
And being real about what the gear does. Because look, there's a lot of gear out there and they all do something a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, but I think you hit a huge point there is the community piece. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask. You know, get connected. If you don't know the production manager of the church down the street, you should take them to coffee, get to know each other, build a relationship for stuff just like that. So when there is that 911 about a Dante issue, a clocking issue, or whatever issue, you've got somebody to text or a bunch of somebody's to text or,
I've even been like, hey, do you have an extra USB DMX dongle from like a church in town? So I'm like, I'm in a bind and I need a favor.
Hey, buddy, you got one in your backpack?
Right, exactly. That's real.
Yeah. And I mean, I even think like Chris, to your point, like big and small, like size doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
You can learn things from everywhere and everyone. Like, I don't think You know, if you're a church of 150 people, it's like, oh, well, there's a church down the street, but there are only 75 people. Like, there's still a good chance they figured something out.
Yeah.
You can learn things from everywhere.
So that's like you make decisions on concept, not final decision.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yes.
why did you pick that piece of gear? And then how do I scale that to my size?
Case in point, what you were texting us about, you're taking things that I told you and things Neil
Mhm.
told you to solve a problem
In a new way.
in a new way with
Yeah.
the same piece of gear that we're all
Yeah.
using.
Yep.
Right. Well, and I love that your point about, you know, big or small, because at times, I think we've talked about this before, that at times the organization can scale to a point to where they don't know exactly what to do to get to that next step of scale.
Yeah.
But yet someone at a church with 150 people, it's like they've got this process nailed because it works for their scale. It's like, wait a minute, we can take that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, but I think so often in a larger church setting, you're so focused on scale that you're not that innovation goes out the window, but it doesn't become the priority. Scale
Right.
does. And
Preach.
so I learn
Preach.
things, and that's one of the reasons I love our mentor calls is
Yeah.
I learn things from churches much smaller than ours all
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
that have made me better and
Yeah.
have made our organization better because I never would have thought to do something
Yeah.
that way because I don't have the time or the bandwidth to look at a more nimble solution. So-
Size can
Totally.
so easily become just throwing money at things to solve problems. Like, I think back to years and years ago when we would be doing like more physical sets and things like that. And it's like, I'll go back and look through photos in my phone of like years ago when we would do stage designs and things like that. And I'm like, how did we like do the things we like? I'll literally like almost be amazed by photos in my own phone of like, how did we pull that off? But it's like a lot of times you just, especially in today's culture, I think of LED walls and then just put a graphic on it. Like, you just start throwing money at things when there's so many other ways to solve problems.
You know, I had a really good conversation with my leader where we were scaling. We were going to more campuses. We were doing more things. And I was internally struggling with the identity of like, no, I've been scrappy. That's what I do is I like take nothing and turn it into something. But now all of a sudden I have to manage these big systems.
That's
And-
biblical. Graves in the gardens.
And he
Hallelujah.
he really challenged me and said, no, you need to be scrappy in a system. And it
That's
blew
good.
my mind.
Wow.
No, that's good.
Wow. Awesome. Cool. Kevis Smolcha. Hey, brother Kevis,
Hey,
down in
Kevis.
Florida. How are you,
Kevis.
man? What are your thoughts on time code in a church setting, Griffin?
Well, first off, know how time code works so that when you copy a sequence, you don't run into the issue I did and turn everything off during Christmas. No, I love time code. I think it's different for every situation in every setting. Like, what I mean by that is for our environment, our worship set, like we are very fluid on a Sunday. So there's a lot of times where we're even changing a song mid-set, mid-service, mid-morning. We can be very fluid. We try to leave space for the Holy Spirit to do what the Holy Spirit does. And if we feel like we need to go a different direction with something, we can on a Sunday. And so for me on a Sunday, it really just doesn't make sense. Even if I had a song bank, trying to get it pulled in time and make sure everything's working and playing nice, like it doesn't make sense for me. For Christmas, Easter, things like that, I look at time code as how can I make sure that services, especially that we have multiple of, stay consistent. So it's more on timing and cues and transitions and things like that. But I think it's great.
Do you run time code at your campuses?
Yes. Yes, comma, yes. So there's a lot of yes, comma, yes. So there's a lot of times where we'll do local time code SMPTE striping for like, local events, local specials, things like that. And then we also send it down our 16 channel audio as well to our campus machines. So we've only done it in like very small scaled kind of tests almost for like scripture elements or things like that. But if we wanted to, theoretically, in the world of production, we could make all of our locations do something at the same time on time code.
Wow. All right. Let's take one more question from Philip Bailey. Hey, Philip Bailey out in California. How are you, man? What was everyone's biggest mind-blown moment from this past season's TL Mentor Circle meeting? Okay. All right. So for those who are watching that may not know, we are graced with three of our mentor leaders here. Griffin and Walter co-lead a mentor circle together, and then Neil leads a mentor circle as well. So yeah, we just actually wrapped up the season. It was great. We had 10 sessions together. What was your biggest takeaway, big mind blow moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's hard to narrow it down. I mean, I think one thing for me personally is that it's always crazy to me how many moments you share with people that it's like, gosh, they're going through that too. It's almost like it's okay for everything to not be figured out and okay. Like I know that in my head, but even to like hear like in our group when people will pose a question, like half the time I'm selfishly internally like, thank goodness somebody else is asking the same question. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just such a relief sometimes to know that like I'm not alone. So that might not be the most like mind blowing moment, but it's like a lot of little moments that create that just, man, I'm not alone.
Well, in this last season, so we obviously co-lead, so it's the same group, right? That like we had volunteers on their production team and guys that have been in the industry for years. And the fact that we were all struggling with the same stuff for me was like there was one session I hopped on. I was like, I think I'm the one that needs therapy today. Like I need to hear from you. I know I'm here to lead.
I think Walter texted me during the session, was like, hey, you kind of take it. I'm just here.
I'm just like, I'm the one getting poured into today. And so, you know, just seeing from all the different sizes.
Well, that's the beauty of mentor circles, right? We're all learning from each other. Those of us who've been doing it longer, those of us who are just getting started. Everybody can learn from everybody else. So what about you, Neil? Who in your group with Brian?
Oh yeah. I had a really unique season. And I mean, to get personal for a second. So I lost my mom in the middle of this season. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I've really ever had to go through. And so I was just blown away about how, you know, my group reached out and just was like, hey, like, is there anything we can do for you? And just knowing like people that I didn't know 8 weeks before. Like some I did, some I didn't, but like it was just incredible that people that I spend an hour with every 2 weeks are like, hey man, I'm praying for you. Is there anything I can do for you? Like, you know, do you need me to DoorDash you dinner or something? Like it, in a time that was so chaotic, it was just incredible to have a community of people surrounding me and just going like, hey man, I'm with you. I got you. It meant the world to me.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Love that for you, man. Love that. Cool. Well, we're kind of at that time where we need to take another quick break here. So Daryl, I'll toss it back over to you and let you chat a little bit about the next thing you've got.
All right. The next thing I've got. I like that, Chris. So yeah, I want to speak into that a little bit. The mentor circles, first off, if you're not aware, they're free. It's the price is paid for. And that said, though, it really kind of isn't. It is free for you to participate, but it does cost you participation. And so anyway, I would highly encourage you to take a look into Thought Leader Mentor Circles. Chris and I, you know, even though we get to lead Thought Leader, we also are part of the Chauvet Lighting family. And some people may not know, but Albert Chauvet and the entire team at Chauvet really stepped up to the plate when we wanted to start this community, this conversation within the church production world. And man, it's amazing. And so we could not do an event like this and not show you a little bit of what's going on at Chauvet, as well as show you a little highlight reel from some of the guys that are part of Thought Leader, leveraging some of Chauvet's product.
I'm Brian Worcester. I am the Creative Director of Experiences for Church of the Highlands. This is the 15th year of Motion. I've been involved since the beginning, so working on stage design when it was back at our broadcast campus. And then we were there for 4 or 5 years, and every year we would just rent in a few more lights and some truss here and change our screens up a little bit. But then we eventually moved to the arena. Been part of the team that's designed the stage every year since.
I'm Griffin McCravey. I'm the broadcast lighting director for Church of the Highlands. I've been involved in Motion from a production standpoint for about 5 years now. Started out as a lighting assistant, getting to kind of learn how to pull off a rig like the one behind me. Highlands was a home church to me growing up, and so I had the privilege to sit in these seats that we're surrounded by and get to experience Motion as a student, and then get to step into a role where I actually lead some teams and create the experience that students in today's world get to come in and experience at Motion.
This is the 15th year of Motion, and Motion is a student conference all about taking junior high, high school, and college students and pushing them forward into a lifestyle of motion for the church, for Jesus, putting their faith into motion, making a difference in their campuses and in their families and in their communities.
From a design standpoint this year, seating students nearly 270 in the room, almost to the sides and even slightly behind the rig itself. We wanted to try to put some curve in the design somehow. So the design very fluidly kind of curves along the edges to allow for not a harsh angle where someone goes from seeing the stage to not seeing the stage, as well as trying to keep the design fairly open. So we're really excited about that. We're really hoping that students are still able to connect no matter where they're seated with the design layout this year.
This year in the rig, we've got Chauvet MK3 profiles, we've got some Color Strike M's, and then the Storm 2 and Storm 3 beam washes.
This year specifically, we really wanted to play in the idea of an all profile rig, something we've never really tried before. The MK3 was a great platform option for us from Chauvet because I was able to get that wide zoom that I want to get some really washy looks in this room, in this 270-degree seating scenario, while also being able to cut through an arena-sized room, really get a nice tight beam, and even get gobos in focus, all that good stuff for in-air effects. The Strike M, I really love the light. We kind of tried to use them for a different deployment method this year for Motion Conference. In the past, they've always kind of been a strobe workhorse for us, and they're still doing that this year as well. Even though it's a bright light, I'm able to manipulate it in a way where I can get really low light coming from the sides. It's using a really bright light to make the room darker, but you're really actually able to cut down on light that you're throwing everywhere else, and in turn kind of get just the focus on what you want it to be on.
I love the ring around the lens on the Storm 2. It is actually my favorite thing about the light. And then with the Storm 3, the way the two rings can focus independently, in this room, they punch so hard, and it is such a, like, it really is a cutting dynamic effect. It's pretty cool. Every year that we do this event, there is some moment that we get into the process where I just have this, like, something happens, I get in the room, and I'm like, I get a little verklempt. I get a little choked up thinking about, what's about to happen. I love the feeling in the room when you can hear the crowd outside, but they're not really in the room yet. I love that energy, that tension, and that I love knowing what they don't know.
My favorite thing about Motion is getting to have the unique viewpoint of being a student who used to sit in a seat and put some of that heart and some of that energy into hopefully what students get to experience this weekend. There really is there's no vantage point like it.
I think the thing I love the most about Motion has changed as the years go by. More and more gear, more lights is always super fun. But for me, I have 2 of my kids are here now. So one of them, that's his third motion, and then the other, it's his first. So I think for me, that's the coolest part, is now that this thing that their dad has been working on for so long, they are now on the receiving end of it. They've just not been watching me leave the house in the morning. So So that part's pretty cool.
All right, welcome back. So I'm just going to tell you, if you have never experienced the Motion Conference in Birmingham, Alabama, you have to go. Chris and I have had the opportunity to be with the team there as we were last year when we shot that video. And it is an amazing experience. And youth walk away with their lives changed. So you should check that out. It happens the end of July, typically every year. Maybe Griff here in a second, if you know the dates off the top of your head, you can throw that out there. But anyway, if you're just joining us, we're coming back kind of from a little bit of a break. This is an AMA, which if you don't know, it's not MMA, it's AMA. It's Ask Me Anything. So we are looking for your questions, the questions you throw into the chat on YouTube. If you're watching us on Instagram, unfortunately, as Chris mentioned earlier, we're not able to see those questions come in the live. We will look back at those and be able to respond to those to you at a later date. But if you want the guys to respond to you in this live event, you need to go onto YouTube. Our YouTube channel is TL_Connect, CONNECT. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to Chris and the fellas.
Awesome. Very cool. So real quick, do you know motion dates off the top of your head?
I do. July 25th through the 27th of this year.
July 25th to 27th.
25th to 27th. You can go to motionstudents.com to register. It's high school, college age students. It's super fun. It's 3 days, guest artists, our worship team, really just an opportunity. It's kind of positioned always at the end of the summer. The idea is just to help students be launched back into high school, college, just kind of to like, from everything that's happened through the summer, have a few days to be able to reconnect with God and be able to just, send it back into wherever they're going when they get out of the summer. And it's always a powerful time.
It is such a cool event. I love getting to come down and hang out in the back with you and get to witness it and be a part of it. It's pretty fun. So I hear that we've got a lot of questions stacking up. Keep those questions coming. That's great. We're going to jump in here with Brother Tone. What is your process for recruiting volunteers? We know we can't do this alone. We have to have armies of people. I know you've got something that I would love for you to share about.
We beg.
And plead and
please.
Lots of Starbucks and donuts.
Please. No, I mean, it's, for anyone who's not familiar with us, we're a multi-site church in Alabama and Georgia. So we have a lot of campuses. So, I mean, on the weekend, if our volunteers didn't show up, we wouldn't have church. Mm-hmm. If we had every staff member helping for the weekend, we might make it for like 1 or 2 Sundays. I mean, it really is crazy. Our church is so led by its own people that it's such a beautiful thing. But some things that we do is we have Growth Track, which is a process that people kind of can first join the church. And then once they have joined the church, we actually give them the opportunity to take a couple different like personality tests and spiritual gift tests to really help them. We try to make it a spiritual journey for them as well as serving. So basically they can actually learn through this process a little bit of like who they are, how God created them, what are some of their gifts, their abilities, their talents. And if that happens to be in the world of production, they could, join our team. And if they come on board our team, we actually have started creating a database of videos where they're able to kind of walk through some different training courses, basically of like, here's what gear looks like, here's what our beliefs are, our values, all that kind of stuff. And then they really get to be hands-on during rehearsal. It's kind of the whole like me watch you and then I get to play and then you watch me, like sort of do it. And then, it just slowly becomes like, I'm going to watch you do it now. And so it's a really fun process to get to kind of walk people through that season.
That's really cool.
No,
that's really, really cool. Walter, what about it? Unlimited?
Yeah, I mean, we have, so we call it Next Step Dinner.
Yeah.
So it's a similar process, right? Yeah. But 2 things that we did that really changed kind of the culture of our recruiting. One was we wanted to make our ministry fun.
Yeah.
Right. So like people want to be where people are having fun.
You mean not the people like dressed in dark clothing and like hiding in dark clothes
and all
we still do that.
Yeah,
But it's more like the community, right? So creating additional points for like the camera team to get together before service, having the audio guys, they do life groups together, just really making the ministry fun, and that attracts people. The other part is intentionality,
Yeah.
right? So like if somebody has a gift for audio or a gift for lighting, you're going to put those people there. Well, we have people that have a gift for people.
Yeah.
And so they actually are in our atrium recruiting, and that's an intentionality point of that person has a gift to get more people.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's cool.
That's
Yeah.
great. So, Will Compton, hey, Will, what do you guys do for volunteer appreciation? Hey, this dovetails right into this. We've recruited the volunteers they've served. How do we show them love and appreciation to thank them for their time serving?
Food is the universal language of thank you.
Yes.
I've learned.
Yes.
And it doesn't always have to be a full meal. Like a little baggie of M&Ms and a handwritten note that says "Thank you for serving."
Okay,
goes
handwritten notes. That's what I was going to say.
Handwritten notes. Yeah, we're doing a production dinner tomorrow night. That's our system-wide, church-wide, all of our campuses. We're inviting them all into Birmingham, feeding them dinner. That's important. And then we actually, for the last like 2 weeks, we've had hundreds of stacks of thank you cards, and we are handwriting every card. So every volunteer this week is getting a handwritten card from one of us on the team that just says, from Griffin and the Highlands production team, just kind of on behalf of the whole organization, thanking them for what they do. And then we're going to give them some vision, give them some things they can kind of grab onto to, get us through the rest of this year.
Yeah, because I don't think anybody else wants another like $5 paperweight, right? Like we have enough of those. I think what our teams really want is our time. And that's what the handwritten card shows. It's really like a gift of our time to be intentional about sending that to them.
I would rather get a handwritten note than a $5 Starbucks gift card.
100%, because it doesn't even cover the coffee.
100% of the time.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Doesn't even cover the coffee. Awesome. Flying High 9500. Oh, it's Sarah Venturi from Pittsburgh. Hey, Sarah, thoughts on automation impacting volunteer roles and how to walk people through how their role is still important?
I have lots of thoughts here.
Well, then why don't you start? Because I have some, but I don't know if I have lots.
So I have lots of thoughts here, but I'm going to try to keep it short. So automation is a wonderful tool. It can help make things that are very difficult a lot easier. I see it get way overused. And I think that does a couple of things. One, you essentially cheat somebody out of an opportunity to learn and really understand what they're doing, right? So you can program a Stream Deck to push one button to do 8 things in your service, and that's really cool. And if you need that, keyword being need, great. That's a fantastic tool you can use to help make something easier and more approachable for volunteer. If you're doing that because you think the automation is cool, that's the wrong reason to do it, right? So like either way, you're going to have to teach and train a volunteer how to participate and engage in the service from a production standpoint. And so you really have a choice. You can either teach that volunteer how to use the automation that you've set up, or you can teach that volunteer how to use the piece of equipment that they're serving with. And I'm a big fan of teaching people how to use the piece of gear that they're using, because it's an opportunity for you to give back a piece of knowledge to that person versus just going, hey, you're a means to an end. I need you to make the service go. This is how you do it.
Yeah. And I'm going to take that one step farther and say the goal of training people is supposed to be able to raise your leadership so that you can do more things, right? So if you automate, but then you're the only one doing anything, you've missed the point of the automation. So it should be like you're going to automate, but then teach the team to program the automation.
Yeah.
Right? Like basically build up people under you. That should be, as a leader, that should be our basically the primary part of our job is raising people
up. And
to
Neil's point, like I would rather they know the gear, and then like if down the road, like we need the automation, like if that's the filter we're using, like at that point, then we would introduce the automation. But like, let's know the gear first. Let's have our base first.
100%.
Because inevitably, if you have the automation process set up and something goes awry with it,
when it goes,
when it's not if things break, it's when things break and how we respond, right? But when something goes wrong with it, how do they then work around that in the moment if they didn't set up the automation in the first place? To your point,
I like the metaphor you use of like a gumball machine.
Peanut
machine. You want to share that?
Yeah.
Because I love that.
I've never heard anybody say it the way you did until you said that.
It's so
good. Right. I think a lot of people get trained to use a peanut machine where it's I push button, get peanut, right? And that's fine, and it satisfies the need of what they're trying to do. But what do you do when the peanut doesn't come out? And if all you've ever trained is push button, get peanut, and that person has no understanding where the peanut comes from, how it gets there, or what it takes, can they run a service for you? Sure, right? Have you invested in that person's ability to be better and invest in what you're doing in your process? No.
Yeah.
And even one step farther, are you equipping people that when they move, right? Because people leave our ministry, that's like a normal part of life, right? People move on. Are you bettering the church or bettering your workflow?
That's good.
Ooh.
That's gold right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Bettering the church or bettering your workful.
That's a one-liner.
That's
a one-liner.
Y'all write that one down.
That's probably going to be an Instagram short here before too long.
Yeah.
Gabe down in Lakeland, Florida. Hey man, how do you communicate to leadership when it's time to add personnel to the team? Wow,
it's a good question, Gabe.
Good one.
As we all just sit here,
I started to say you guys just went silent on us.
I was really like, that's a
you know,
complicated question.
It really is. To kind of tie it back to earlier when we were talking about gear, I think in order for you to be able to ask, you have to first be able to prove that it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that someone is to be compared to a fixture or a console, but in the same way, until, at least in my opinion, until I can prove that it's necessary for the church and necessary for the individual, how can I back up well, I need it? That's not, in my opinion, that's not an answer. Like if we're going to space, and we're on the shuttle and NASA's like, I need you to press, this button and turn this screw a quarter turn. And we're like, why? And they're like, well, we just need you to. It's like, no, explain to me what's happening. And so I think when we can key in our leadership to where we're at, where our team is at, team health, hours, all those kinds of things, I think that then gives us the ability to be able to be like, hey, I need more help. I need more positions filled on the team. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think knowing when it's time to. So if you wait to ask for help until you're a puddle of a human being, because you're trying to do, like, if you're not having regular, open, honest conversations about bandwidth, it makes it really tough when suddenly you're at the end. And I'm speaking from experience here, right? Like when you're at the end of yourself and then you go to ask for help, you're not going to handle that conversation well. And you're going to be driven by a lot of emotions that are coming from you being burnt out, likely family tension that's driving it as well. And that's not a good conversation for anybody.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're hangry. It's like you're already so hungry, you just can't even decide where to go eat. When you should have decided 2 hours ago. And you've just like gotten yourself in a hole at this point, and you need to just find the closest drive-through, and it's not going to be what you want, and it's not going to satisfy you the way you thought it was. That's the kind of the situation you can get into with teams and even with your own time.
And sometimes the answer isn't even more personnel. It's going to your leader and saying, here's what I'm spending my time on. Are these things you want me to be doing? Because sometimes you're doing stuff and they're like, why did you spend 10 hours on that? I don't even care about that thing.
It's so easy to take on assumed responsibility for things that your leadership is like, I never asked you to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to tell a story about that?
I started to say I was about ready to jump in there, fellas.
Yeah, to make it a long story short, and this goes into as well like communication with different people within the organization. Like people don't always understand your world like you think they do or like you do. And so a couple of years ago, we were getting ready to have our monthly student service, right? And I get a call from someone who talked to somebody who talked to the student pastor. That is your first red flag. The
telephone in the church.
Yeah, the game of telephone through the departments. And it was, hey, youth pastor wants to be able to see all the campuses when he hits stage tonight. And this is the morning of. And in my head, I'm thinking so we clarify, we're like, he wants to see every room that's joining us tonight when we go live. And they're like, yes, and I'm like, okay. And so long story short, we come up with a way. We have like a PTZ kind of camera situation in most all of our rooms. So it's not like a stage looking into the crowd. It's the back of people's heads. But we find a way to show them like every single room when we go live. Well, fast forward to sound check. We get done with that. We have a speaker touch point. We're like, hey, can we walk you out on stage and just show you the setup we have? So we walk him out on stage. We've parked a TV in the room to be like a monitor for him to see the feed that's coming through. And he looks out at it and he's like, what is that? We were like, it's a multi-view layout of
no.
all the PTZs of all the rooms that are joining us tonight. He goes, no, I just needed a list of what campuses are joining us tonight. I walked into the green room.
I know the punchline, and it's still one of my favorite stories.
I was just like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, we're ready for doors. We're ready for doors.
And I'm going home.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Oh my gosh. That's all right. Let's see what we've got next up here, Daryl. What's the next question we've got? From Nathan G. How do you determine the appropriate level of flashiness? While also creating an atmosphere conducive to worship.
So real quick before you guys respond to that, Chris, go ahead and read that again, because we have another question come in that's very similar. So I want to make sure both of them get up and you can kind of tie them together all in one.
Okay. So how do you determine the appropriate level of flashiness while also creating an atmosphere conducive to worship? What are some good rules of thumb to enhance and not distract in a worship service?
That is the question.
That's all you, my friend.
Oh, I feel like it's not a static answer, right? Like there's not one. It's not a black and white line. It's a pendulum that swings, and it's really based on like really the vision of your leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's vision of leadership, and then I think it's also, I think there's vision of leadership, and I think that there's also internal checks and ticks that you can make to determine like, okay, let me just take myself, who's a very easily distracted by gear production person. If I plopped myself into this own environment that I'm creating, would I distract myself? And a lot of times, if I'm being honest with myself, the answer is probably yes. You know, at some point or another, it's the question isn't lights or no lights or smoke or no smoke. It's, you know, it's impact or show. It's, are we trying to create an impactful environment that doesn't make like this happen of people watching gear? It makes this happen where they're being elevated to a worship environment. I'm never trying to like be the star of the show. I'm only trying to raise the level of environment that people are in and make it more interactive and more impactful, I guess.
I used to tell our team if the folks sitting in our rooms are more interested in taking out their phones to take a picture than they are engaging in the worship experience, we've missed.
Yeah.
Do y'all feel like that pendulum has swung in the last few years, just as like, you know, across churches across the country, right? Like kind of the experience that people are looking for today in worship is not the same as what it was 5 years ago.
Well, I don't know about y'all regionally. For us regionally, we have determined that we have more first-time guests than maybe we've ever had before.
Yeah.
And so one of the filters that we're trying to use when we're thinking and, you know, planning services is for people who don't know what church is supposed to look like. Like I grew up in church, so like I already have an idea of what I think church is walking into it. But I think there's more than ever before people walking into our doors who don't know what it's supposed to look like. They have preconceived notions and ideas and photos and social media and all that kind of stuff, but they're walking in to experience it for the first time. And I want to make sure the environment that I'm creating is an environment that is worthy of, you know, what we're trying to do, which is to, you know, communicate the gospel, you know? And so I don't know. It's a moving target. I think if you decide one thing and you're like, this is how we do it and this is how we're going to do it, you're going to miss it. At some point, it's going to change.
I think that's the important part right there. Yeah,
that's good.
Definitely. I love that. That's great, guys. Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, we need to take another quick break here, real short. Daryl, I'm going to toss it back to you real quick and let you take it from here.
All right. Thanks, guys. Well, hey, first off, the questions are stacking up. Love it. I'm trying to lay them out so that they're building on each other a little bit. Obviously, we want your questions to come in. So we are going to take a quick little break. We're going to show you some video content, if you will, of Thought Leader Connect, some of the testimonials of folks who have been involved in Thought Leader conversation. But just a reminder, while we're in the break, please post your questions. It's an AMA style Ask Me Anything. So without your questions, we don't know what to respond and what information to provide you. So we ask that when you post in the chat to put your name, your location, and then your question. We would love to know where you're from. And so with that, here's some testimonials from Thought Leader.
Jump in both feet. You're not going to be disappointed. It's a group of other individuals just like yourself.
If I had a friend considering joining Thought Leader, I would really ask them why they're stuck at the considering point.
Thought Leader is a tribe of people who are passionate about leading well.
The one thing that I value about my experience so far with Thought Leader is intentional relationships and conversations with people who are going through the same struggles I'm going through, that we can share how to get through things together and grow together.
It's a really amazing opportunity to meet like-minded people who really care, and we're all going after the same thing, to have people be impacted.
Thought leader to me would be community and just like a resource.
What I value most about being in Thought Leader is really the consistent community.
Thought Leaders has impacted my leadership style by being able to learn from others how to be a healthy leader so that I can lead our team in a healthy way.
I have learned to think about the people first, gear second. If the people are good, if the people are pastored well and stewarded well, everything else will fall into place.
If you value your health as a leader and your team and the way that they grow, to take the time that it takes to invest in these relationships is so worth it.
Beforehand, I might have tunnel vision, blinders on, you could say, from just things that I maybe wasn't able to connect with for various reasons, but hearing it from other leaders, having those conversations back and forth has opened up my view and allowed me to correct some things in my own ministry that has really taken it to the next level.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Being in this group, being in this community has definitely shaped the trajectory of how I operate.
All Thought Leaders does is bring that potential to the surface. It helps you grow more and more, and it's free. So why wouldn't you do it? You have nothing to lose.
If I had one word to describe Thought Leader with, it would be community.
Life-giving.
Community. It's encouraging.
Intentional.
Community.
Trusting.
Engaging.
I'm going to give you 3 words: church, production, family.
If people aren't aware of Thought Leader or what Thought Leader is, they need to know about it. They need to be part of it. We call it mentor circles because it's everybody that's, it's kind of mentoring everybody. And so like we'll ask a question and you get 20 different perspectives on it because we all have the same questions. And you can learn some of people are a little bit further ahead in their journey and have some more solutions. And you're probably a little bit further ahead than other people. It is a community that literally thinks like you do. You might be at your church and you're the only production guy and you feel like you're alone or you're the weirdo or the socially awkward one. And you probably are. We love you. Come be part of the community and you'll become better at your craft, better as a person, better as a leader, and better as a teammate.
All right, welcome back. We had a little bit of time to stretch and kind of get ourselves relaxed again. And for those of you that weren't here at the beginning of the call, we do have the ability to interpret Spanish as well as English questions that you have. So make sure that you're throwing those questions in the chat. When you throw a question in the chat, you do need to be in the YouTube. Watching us on YouTube. Those of you who are watching us on Instagram, we're so glad you're there. Unfortunately, we're not able to get that feed directly into us to throw to the guys on the stage tonight for direct questions. So if you want to ask a question for these guys to respond to, you're going to need to jump into our YouTube channel, which is TL_Connect. With that, we do, fellas, have our very first Spanish question.
All right.
And it's coming from Puerto Rico. So here we go.
Puerto Rico. Very cool. All right, who's got that?
Yeah, help us out there, Daryl.
You know what?
Un poco.
So I'll help you out.
Can Paula help us out?
Yeah, Miss Paula is helping us out.
I know
here,
we're close to Mexico, but not quite that far south.
So Henry, he is from, I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I won't be able to do that. I apologize, Henry, but he's from Costa Rica, and he asked, how do you deal with shadows on the stage and over the audience?
So probably in a front light world. Is that
Yeah,
what we're
like
thinking?
key light.
That's what I'm
With,
hearing.
like key light.
Let's look at it from a key light standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're thinking about what we're trying to do. So we're trying to both create a service that looks good in person as well as has a great broadcasted product for our satellite locations, for online, all that kind of stuff. So we run 2 washes. We run a vocal wash that's like pretty tight, pretty cropped down. Still looks good on the vocalist, but it's not throwing light everywhere. So that's still kind of a little more intimate and not quite as bright during worship. And then for speaking, it's a little more like, news station, cinema, broadcasty kind of style. Like it's a lot brighter and there's a lot more light just getting thrown at the stage. But there's 30-degree angles, 45-degree angles. There's all kinds of different ways to do 2-way lighting, 3-way lighting that you can really kind of cut down on shadows. And you want to hit the technical side for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, a lot of times when that issue is there, it's because it's a low ceiling issue, right? And so the problem is when you get those lights close to the stage, you're coming down too harsh and you're getting those really bad down shadows. One way that you can help offset that is still come close and get those down shadows, but then get a floor light.
Yeah,
and
like
kind
an
of help
uplight,
offset
kicker.
that.
People call it different things.
Right. And basically just try to I'm going to try and draw it in the air, but meet it in the middle. So it balances out the face.
Yeah. I would say if you're looking for something that works, just a point here, and a nice backlight is a great place to start. Yeah. But don't be afraid to try things. I think so often with front light, people get stuck in this it's got to be a 45-degree angle, and these are the rules, and that's not the case, right? Do some experimentation, find what works best for your communicator, find what works best in your room, and go with it.
Yeah. And one tidbit, if you are, so we do this at our church. We talked about using vocal lighting and sermon lighting, right? A pan tilt zoomable fixture is a game changer on key lighting because you can take one fixture and hit both issues with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, shameless plug for you and Christ Fellowship, Neil. Definitely go and Henry, go onto our YouTube and find the Perspectives a playlist.
Yeah.
Neil actually did our very first season of Perspectives. Go find his key lighting episode and watch it. It's really cool as he talks through the process of how they got to doing their key light the way that they are now. So,
I changed our key lights based on that video.
Thanks, Walter. That's cool.
Simon is asking a good question here. He says, how do you know when you've been limping a piece of gear along for too long and you've wrung every piece of potential out of it? What point is fixing and repairing not even worth it anymore?
If it is creating distractions in your experience, that's kind of your first clue. So if it's your pastor's microphone and it's dropping out while he's talking, that's kind of a key indicator. I think fixing it and repairing it really just comes down to cost, right?
Yeah.
Your time and the time of the people that are having to do the repair has value for your organization, right? So if it is costing you time, stress, worry, more than that piece of gear is worth, it's time to replace it.
Yeah.
Do you have a value? Like, do you do 50% of value, 60% of value on repair costs before you just say, I'm just going to flip it?
I think for us, it depends on the age of the gear. So if it's a brand new piece of gear, I'm going to do anything I can to make sure that I can pull the warranty and make sure it's good to go. And then I think it's how old is it, right? Because I'm not going to invest, 70% of the cost of a piece of gear into a 10-year-old piece of gear, right? And then I think the other question is, is it replaceable? Because I think in a lot of situations over time, gear, it goes EOL and technology changes. And so you may have a really cornerstone piece of gear that you have to keep running. That happened with our video switcher.
We actually just had this conversation earlier that there are some pieces of gear that you have to limp along because there's not a feasible solution right now. And sometimes it doesn't exist. Like there's not a replacement. Sometimes it may not be the best decision in a perfect world to repair it, but the realities of your cash flow and your budget at your church is that you repair it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Sean's got another question for us. We're all busy making things happen. What suggestions do you have to help other local techs understand the importance of making time for community with each other? I'd love a monthly get together. Hey, Sean, there's a really cool bi-weekly get-together you can be a part of called Thought Leader.
And it's over Zoom, so you can be
it's over
anywhere.
Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. So
kicking that off in July for the next one.
July week of July 15th will be the next round of those kicking off. But let's talk about in-person stuff. Like, what are some practical things you guys might be able to think of?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've tried to do is it's almost like a cold call, almost like reach out to some of the guys in like my city where I am and just be like, hey, would any of you like to hang out? You know, get lunch sometime, you know, just see what each other are doing, see what each other have going on. I just last week had 3 guys actually from a church in town where I'm at, never met them before. And they just were like, hey, we're thinking about doing a lighting upgrade at our main campus. Could we just come over and like see your rig and just kind of like get some ideas? I was like, sure. So they come over, we hang out for a while, and end up by the end of it, we've already set a date to all go get lunch and just hang out. So they were like,
awesome.
We've seen a bunch of things that we think we can implement, but also like, let's just do this again. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I think sometimes it's just opening the door. I think like us's are scared sometimes to be like, hey, you want to go get lunch? You know, it's like, we're just all introverted.
You know, one thing one of my teammates does, and Felix, if you're watching, he does an incredible job of this, is he builds relationships, not just with other churches in the community, but news stations and radio stations and colleges.
Yeah,
and so he'll reach out and go, can I just take you to lunch? Like just that I'm not asking anything of you. I just want to take you to lunch.
Yeah.
And it's really effective.
And it's probably a question that places like that don't get often.
Ever.
So when they get it, they're like, this is very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Very cool. Daryl, we got another one stacked up there to take a look at.
Yeah, I'm trying to. We've got quite a few that are in the same vein. So maybe I'll just start here with Miss Christina.
This is Christina, another one of our thought leaders.
Hello.
She leads the ladies mentor circle that meets. This is pretty awesome. So, any advice for upwardly mentoring a new TD to bring them into the church culture while still leaving room for the unique qualities they bring that has been missing from your team?
Wow, that's a big one.
Whoa. I mean, I had a good conversation with one of my teammates the other day, and he asked, how do we identify and develop leaders? And I kind of said it's a case by case because it really depends on the person. And so that's where that, you know, we talked a lot about relationships, right? Like just investing in that person, because a leader may be an engineer. They may be a front of house guy, maybe lighting. They may just be administration. There's different skill sets. And so that's just taking that time to have that relationship with them to know what that skill set is.
Yeah, that's good. I think too, like, don't obviously support that person, but don't be afraid to let them fail.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, so often as leaders, when we've got somebody we're bringing up and we like really care about, we just like want to always be in front of them, like making sure. And my most memorable learning experiences in church production have not been my moments of success.
Yeah.
They've been my moments of failure, and then how my leader at the time helped me respond to that failure. Those are my most memorable learning experiences. So it's very easy for me to forget that and go like, no, let me show you how to do that. And I think finding appropriate times to let that person step out and try something, and it creating a safe place for them to fail is really, really important.
And appropriate places too. Not like, hey, bud, here you go.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things we had to work on in our ministry is we value excellence, but excellence is not the same as perfection.
Yeah, that's good. Say it again.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Walter, you're talking about excellence and all that. How do you guys like evaluate, like with volunteer teams, especially like evaluate those capabilities and to make sure that people are plugged into the right spots based on their skills?
Yeah, so we do a few things. One, we have a system. We actually have written it down on what skills. So we kind of have like a grading system, right? Like how are they developing along so that we can keep track, right? Because it's in the chaos, it's like, did they learn this, this, and this? So we actually have a system of like, okay, when you're teaching level 1, this is the checkbox.
Okay, cool.
Right? So like if for an audio guy, do they know how to run faders? Do they know what gain structure, right? So really specific things. That helps us. Yeah, I'm going to pass it to Griff. How do you guys do that?
Yeah,
it is a tough one.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, I would agree with you that if you're not measuring something, then you don't know how healthy or not healthy it is. So like, you know, we'll have people who are kind of new to our growth track system that I was talking about earlier. Like we'll have people be like, oh, like they hear that like they're going to be evaluated. They're like, oh, I've got to take a test. We're like, yeah, but it's not to hurt you or to try to like prove or disprove what you know. It's so that we can help figure out how we can best help you. You know, until we all figure out where you're at and where you're at in this process, then there's no way for us to know kind of where to help you and kind of where to point you next. So I think that's why analytics are so good, and really evaluating volunteers are good through that training process, and being very open with them through the process of, hey, like, you're really starting to understand timing, but like you still just aren't sure the software side of the console, and so let's like help you figure out how to get to that point.
Yeah, I just want to tag that with, you have to have a culture of feedback and being okay with feedback.
Yeah.
And that starts with the leadership.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
So like if we're not okay with getting feedback from people below us, how could we expect to give them feedback and receive it?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I saw a question from Aaron pop up there. What does the relationships look like between worship, production, and senior leadership in terms of atmosphere and creativity in the worship experience? And how do those discussions go for each of you? What's the relationship between worship, production, and senior leadership in the creative space?
You want to take that one?
So we're fond of saying we're all one team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does that play out perfect every weekend? No, absolutely not. Right. We have disagreements about how things should be approached, and how we get there. I think some of the how behind what we do, is open for debate between our teams. But at the end of the day, from a culture standpoint, we all know, like, hey, we all have one common goal.
Yeah.
And that's to reach people for Jesus. So how do we get on the same team with each other and figure out how to move the ball forward?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for us, senior pastor kind of sets that vision. That's like hearing from him and make sure we understand his heart and what God's speaking to him helps us set the tone for how we approach it. And then we talked about feedback, having regular meetings. Are we hitting the mark? Is there something that's maybe not in alignment with that vision? Just that regular communication.
Yeah. And we actually kind of, as a team structure, we realized that worship and production, we've been like seeing those as two separate teams, when in reality we're the two teams kind of helping make the service happen.
Yeah.
And so a couple of years ago, we actually all came together under leadership and became worship, which is music and production. And so now that allows us to just more naturally be in meetings together, be in environments together. And then, like you were saying, our senior pastor, since it's such a tight-knit bond of his vision and what he's wanting for the service and the message that he's wanting to portray is so often carried out by our two teams, worship and production, that he'll send us like, quick little just video updates of like what we're thinking, what season we're in, where we're going, what this new series is going to try to do for people attending, things like that. And so, we're trying to make some steps in the right direction.
Yeah. I like to call worship and production two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Right. You can't have one without the other. And so
you can't hear them without us, and we have nothing to light without them.
Exactly.
All right. We got one more question here. What are some thoughts about busking versus programming? What benefits do you see in each, and what situations would they be most applicable in? And I know that kid because he has the same last name as me.
I was going to say, I feel like we know him.
Do either of y'all busk?
It depends on how you describe busk. I guess you could say I kind of do. So what I do is, again, going back to when we were talking about time code earlier, like our situation, our environment, we are so fluid a lot of times on the weekend that I have a cue list that's one cue for every song, every part of the service. So like walk in, countdown video, worship set, song 1, 2, 3, whatever. And so I have a base that I'm kind of going off of. And then from that, I'm using pre-built presets, color presets, position presets, and effects to kind of run the service. And then being on the Grand MA platform, using some things like special masters to like tie in BPM faders and things like that, so that like when I play into the song is kind of setting the scene for me, so to speak. The base of all my effects and the base look and all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of going from there.
That was very artistic.
I am a creative.
So we don't busk at all.
At all.
Like very, very rarely. And it's usually because something went wrong. It's not like busking. It's like, let me fix this thing.
Everything's on fire. Be right back.
Right. And for us, it's so the way that we structure our services, we're a tight 1 hour. We have services or multiple campuses that are live with us. So sticking to that timing is really critical for us.
Yeah.
So we we kind of know exactly what the surface is going to look like before we lay it out. So programming works better for our situation.
And we have to do the same. I mean, being multi-site, like we have to stick to a schedule. And so what we've tried to do to kind of marry like your situation and like straight up busking is our main campus will time their worship set once they have like a plan. Let's say it's 23 minutes. We communicate that out to the campuses on Sunday morning, like amongst sound check as it's happening. So then we kind of try to create like, instead of saying we have to hit song 3 at 12 minutes into the service, it's you have 20 minutes. Good luck. And not good luck in the sense of like you're on your own.
Good luck.
Not like, not like
wrong.
here you go. Good luck. 20 minutes in the sense of like, you know, we have 20 minutes. You need to be wrapping up at 20 minutes. We've given you all the things to the recipe to make it work. Go make it your own. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And definitely, if you're single church versus multi-site, just in general, totally different ball game.
Yeah,
totally different ball. Like when we were one location.
Yeah.
I used to busk all the time.
Yeah.
But it's a different animal when you go multi-site.
Right. When you start scaling up like that, you have to. Cool. Well, real quick, I hope you're getting value out of all the wisdom bombs that these guys are dropping tonight. Again, thank you to each one of you for being here. I'm loving this conversation. We're having a great time. Keep those questions coming in the chat. We've got some more stacked up in there that we'll be tackling here in a minute. I'm going to toss it back to Daryl again real fast to talk about Chauvet and why we're even able to be here to do what we do.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So we're going to give the guys a little bit of a break here. And again, for those of you that don't know, Chris and I are very honored to be part of the Chauvet family. And we're very blessed that Albert Chauvet and the entire family at Chauvet supports what we do here at Thought Leader. Thought Leader is the sole supporter financially of what we do in the Thought Leader conversation, makes events like this happen and other things that we get to do, as well as our social media platform and all of the Mentor Circle calls. So let's take just a little bit and let's take a look at kind of a new product that has been introduced to the Chauvet family recently, as well as take a look at a little behind the scenes of a project that some of the guys that are part of Thought Leader worked on earlier this year using Chauvet.
I'm Brian Worcester. I am the Creative Director of Experiences for Church of the Highlands. This is the 15th year of Motion. I've been involved since the beginning, so working on stage design when it was back at our broadcast campus. And then we were there for 4 or 5 years, and every year we would just rent in a few more lights and some truss here and change our screens up a little bit. But then we eventually moved to the arena. Been part of the team that's designed the stage every year since.
I'm Griffin McCravey. I'm the broadcast lighting director for Church of the Highlands. I've been involved in Motion from a production standpoint for about 5 years now. Started out as a lighting assistant, getting to kind of learn how to pull off a rig like the one behind me. Highlands was a home church to me growing up, and so I had the privilege to sit in these seats that we're surrounded by and get to experience Motion as a student, and then get to step into a role where I actually lead some teams and create the experience that students in today's world get to come in and experience at Motion.
This is the 15th year of Motion, and Motion is a student conference all about taking junior high, high school, and college students and pushing them forward into a lifestyle of motion for the church, for Jesus, putting their faith into motion, making a difference in their campuses and in their families and in their communities.
From a design standpoint this year, seating students nearly 270 in the room, almost to the sides and even slightly behind the rig itself. We wanted to try to put some curve in the design somehow. So the design very fluidly kind of curves along the edges to allow for not a harsh angle where someone goes from seeing the stage to not seeing the stage, as well as trying to keep the design fairly open. So we're really excited about that. We're really hoping that students are still able to connect no matter where they're seated with the design layout this year.
This year in the rig, we've got Chauvet MK3 profiles. We've got some Color Strike M's, and then the Storm 2 and Storm 3 beam washes.
This year specifically, we really wanted to play in the idea of an all profile rig, something we've never really tried before. The MK3 was a great platform option for us from Chauvet because I was able to get that wide zoom that I want to get some really washy looks in this room, in this 270-degree seating scenario, while also being able to cut through an arena-sized room, really get a nice tight beam, and even get gobos in focus, all that good stuff for in-air effects. The Strike M, I really love the light. We kind of tried to use them for a different deployment method this year for Motion Conference. In the past, they've always kind of been a strobe workhorse for us, and they're still doing that this year as well. Even though it's a bright light, I'm able to manipulate it in a way where I can get really low light coming from the sides. Whereas using a really bright light to make the room darker, but you're really actually able to cut down on light that you're throwing everywhere else, and in turn kind of get just the focus on what you want it to be on.
I love the ring around the lens on the Storm 2. It is actually my favorite thing about the light. And then with the Storm 3, the way the two rings can focus independently, in this room, they punch so hard, and it is such a, like, it really is a cutting dynamic effect. It's pretty cool. Every year that we do this event, there is some moment that we get into the process where I just have this, like, something happens, I get in the room, and I'm like, I get a little verklempt. I get a little choked up thinking about, you know, what's about to happen. I love the feeling in the room when you can hear the crowd outside, but they're not really in the room yet. I love that energy, that tension, and that I love knowing what they don't know.
My favorite thing about Motion is getting to have the unique viewpoint of being a student who used to sit in this seat and put some of that heart and some of that energy into hopefully what students get to experience this weekend. There really is there's no vantage point like it.
I think the thing I love the most about Motion has changed as the years go by. More and more gear, more lights is always super fun. But for me, I have two of my kids are here now. So one of them, that's his third motion, and then the other, it's his first. So I think for me, that's the coolest part, is now that this thing that their dad has been working on for so long, they are now like on the receiving end of it. They've just not been like watching me leave the house in the morning. So that part's pretty cool.
All right, welcome back. So going into this next segment, we just want to take a moment and we want to thank a good friend of ours, James from Canon. He really stepped up. He's provided all the cameras that you're seeing. I'm not a video guy, so I don't even want to start saying what we have here. But James, we want you to know that we appreciate you. We appreciate you guys stepping up and supporting what we do here at Thought Leaders. It's very appreciated. If you're just jumping onto the stream, a reminder, this is an AMA style live event. Ask me anything. Our guys that are here, they're not going to respond if you don't put in a question. So we need your questions. We need to know what you want to hear from them. We do have some stacked up, and so we're going to kick that off here shortly. But as a reminder, if you're viewing us on Instagram, we can't see, unfortunately, your chat in the studio here with us. The only way we can is through YouTube. So you'll need to go over to our YouTube channel if you want to ask a question. But we do ask that you put your name, you put your location, and then your question. And as soon as we can fit that in, and we'll throw it to the guys, we'll get it taken care of for you. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Chris. And Chris, we do have another Spanish question to kick this one off with. So
all right,
see if you can
dive
interpret
into
this one.
Yep, I'm out on that one. I do know it's Puerto Rico. I got Puerto Rico.
Yep.
I got that much out of it.
Perspective.
I do see perspective.
I got integration in there.
There's
integration.
Processes, maybe?
Daryl,
Processes?
help us out here.
I'm going to help you out through Miss Paula.
Thank
She's
you.
done a pretty good
Thank you,
job
Paula.
here.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
use my phone a friend, Paula.
Right. Phone a friend. I already did that for us.
I
So
appreciate it.
Raymond asked, how do you manage the integration of advanced systems or technology, I would say, from the creative process to the realization without losing the real perspective of the message? So I would say, using technology, how do we make sure that the gospel is still what is on top and not the technology?
I think personally that's got Neil written all over
That
it.
sounds like a Neil question.
Brother
to me.
Neil.
I think, to put it as simply as I can, keep the first thing first, right? The message of what you're trying to communicate has to be the most important thing. Some of the worst creative meetings I've sat in over my career start with an effect or a gimmick, right? Don't try to build a message around a piece of production. It will never go as well as you think it will. Start with, this is what I'm trying to communicate. That's important. Now, how do I supplement that with production? How do I add production to make that message even more impactful, or maybe impactful in a way that somebody who's new may find different, right? To be able to use technology to help highlight something in a different light for somebody that may not have seen it that way before.
No.
But don't start with gear. Start with an idea, start with a message, keep what's important up front, and then supplement that message with gear.
Yeah,
That's so good.
The why behind the what, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The why first, and then the what and the how later.
That's so good.
Rudy Gonzalez up in California. Hey, brother Rudy, good to see you on here tonight. Question: do your churches have a planned obsolescence program? How do you go about refreshing and replacing your system so it doesn't interrupt services? So we buy gear. Gear we know has a lifespan. Do you guys have processes in place for tracking that kind of stuff to keep those worship services distraction free?
From a gear side of the question, before we can buy it, we have to have a 5-year plan for it and a 10-year plan for it. So in 5 years, is it still considered expected to be within life? And if it is, where is it at in its lifespan? If it's a 10-year piece of gear, where will it be in 10 years? What is our plan for where we have to go from there once we need to replace it? As far as, how do we schedule things around not interrupting services? I don't know about y'all, but that's a good luck kind of answer to that question. It's like you kind of take it where you can get it, during the week, just looking seasonally at the church calendar, and when do we have more events, when do we have less events. Summertime is usually when there's not quite as much going on around the church, at least during the week. So that's kind of, I don't know about for y'all.
I'm a big fan of saying there will never be a good time to do this project or repair because there's always something going on.
True.
There's student ministries and there's camp and there's all these events that we're doing, and so I'm a big fan of saying, hey, let's not impede ministry by waiting on that repair, waiting on that project. Let's get together.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to do it while keeping ministry moving forward.
That's
even if that has to look different for a week or two.
Yeah.
Right. Like, let's all get together and make a compromise, knowing that on the other side of this, everything is better for everybody moving forward.
Yeah, that's good.
It's I hear people say a lot, well, when it slows down. I'll get to
It
that.
doesn't.
When does this? Has it slowed down for you?
I haven't felt that
It's been
time
10
yet.
years. It hasn't slowed down.
Jesus is going to come back someday. And at that point, we won't need to do the repair.
It's we say, like, don't wait for it to slow down. Make sure the most important things are the most important things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Henry has another question for us.
Yeah, I've got a phone a friend.
Yeah, Paula. I see something that's really,
How do
really
you make
good.
persons and pastors look good, beautiful, and then I lose it?
Walter's really trying.
I'm really trying. I'm really pulling out that high school Spanish.
I'll say you're close, but I'll just read what Paula has provided us with.
That's
here.
probably a good idea.
Yeah, for sure.
In Latin America, is complicated to have the administration. I'm guessing that's leadership. Understand that the cute and cheaper things are not the best and many times do not work. How do you incentivize investment, even if in phases? So I think my interpretation of that is it's hard to sell administration on things that are more expensive. They want the cheap and cute things. How do we incentivize, or how do we talk them to understand? We kind of hit this a little earlier, so I don't know. We got to go deep on it, but
yeah, I mean, my quick thing would be like figure out systematically like how it's going to serve your system. So, you know, like for example, if it's going to be like an eye candy thing, like a lighting thing on a stage, you know, maybe it does make sense to be a little more on the cost effective side and maybe just have a couple extra on hand. If it's my, you know, switcher backbone or my network, you know, IT infrastructure, I'm not cheaping out on the things that are going to have to pull more workload.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a season of buying a lot of the cheaper fixtures, and really what we said was we looked at how often am I replacing these, and are they actually cheaper, right? So
That's huge,
especially if you're talking administration, you're probably talking accountants and finance people. They're going to be looking at the depreciation cost of an item, and so like how much did I actually spend over a 5-year period, not over a one-time purchase?
That's big.
Numbers will speak a lot louder than your feelings, and so if you can show someone, hey, we had to buy this piece of gear 3 times, and the better version of it only costs half that much.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation to have, but that's a helpful conversation going forward to go, hey, this is something that we need to look at because we're not stewarding this resource.
Yeah, because especially to, you know, upper leadership, it can be like, well, that's a light, this is a light, this one's half the cost of this one. But it's no, over 3 years, we've paid 1.5 times what we would have paid on the one that came with a 5-year warranty, you know?
For sure.
So it just, it's a great point.
Or even the capability of the product.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Stacy's got a good question here. When leading a volunteer team in a control room that's separate from the worship center, how have you created a fun and engaging environment while also maintaining excellence at the same time? Yeah, have fun. We still got a job to do.
Yeah.
How do we create those fun environments in a control room? Neil, you spend a lot of time in control rooms.
You're probably most in the control room.
I do. So this is something, we have a control room that's in a different building from our main worship center. And so it can be really easy for the team to feel maybe a little bit isolated because they're not with everybody else. And so we've done a couple of things to combat that. One, everybody huddles together on platform before we do anything. So we start the day as one team all together. And then we've also, at our broadcast location, we have a single green room. So everybody who's on platform and serving, as well as everybody who's a part of video is together between services in that green room. They've got that opportunity to connect with different teams and different people and have a good time. I mean, Chris, like you said, when it comes down to it, we've got a job to do, but production should also be fun, right? Like
you should enjoy what you're doing.
If there's so much tension in the room that like nobody can smile because everybody's so nervous about messing up, like there's probably something that's a little bit out of whack in your culture.
When that kind of hits that like excellence, not perfection thing, right? Like when my ministry has been unhealthy in the control room, it's because I'm expecting perfection, and they make one small mistake, and it's, I don't know if you can be in that position anymore, right? Like it's like that's not healthy, right? We want people to have fun and know that it's okay to make mistakes and know that we're here for them.
Yeah,
that's like it's still ministry.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Cool. Next one up, another one from Rudy. For Griffin. Oh, he's calling you out.
Wow.
With Highlands being huge, what ways?
That's an understatement,
Yeah,
right?
that's a slight understatement. What ways have you helped your campus level leads become innovators rather than central lead?
I also want to know the answer to this question.
Yeah, that's a good question, Rudy.
That's a good question. I would say one of the things that we've learned the hard way is don't expect things for people and don't say no for people. So instead of packaging up everything a production team at a campus level needs to know for an event coming up, why not instead package up everything that we're using at the broadcast campus, at the main campus, explain to them the systems and bring them and encourage them to come up to a level to where they're creating the atmosphere locally that we're creating at broadcast, and then giving them everything they need to succeed. So instead of, like kind of, corporate fast food chain of like, hey, here's the playbook, run it, done. Your French fries will be here next week. It's like, here's how we make the French fries. Here's all the seasonings we use. I want you to learn how to do it just as well as I'm doing it, and maybe even one day do it better than I do it. And so it's just kind of like, partly it's encouraging to people to come up, to take a step up to the next level, I think, and then giving them the tools they need to do that, and not kind of, tying their hands behind their back.
What do you guys use or do to prevent culture drift when you're giving that kind of authority to campus?
My big thing, and it's taken straight from my senior pastor, he always says vision leaks. So as soon as you say something, it starts leaking.
Yep.
So if you don't consistently and continually, not in a nagging way, but remind people why we do what we do and have real practical examples of why we do what we do, it's going to leak. You just have to be intentional. You have to be so intentional that you are not just making somebody be a part of a system, but that they are a part of a family, they're a part of a team, and that there's a goal and there's a vision that we're trying to reach.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
good. That's
Yeah,
good.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to play a little bit of batter's box here. We've got a handful stacked up.
Oh boy.
We'll see what we've got going here. So,
yeah. So a lot of these are all around the same thing, but I want everyone to know that we have heard your voice. We saw your questions, so we're going to put them up here. First one's from Drew. If you want to read that, Chris.
Leading a team and serving in production roles to support the ministry can lead to longer hours. You ain't lying.
Mm-hmm.
How are you requesting and recharging your soul? Resting and recharging your soul to be the best leader possible for your team? I think I know where this is going. What's the next one you got, Daryl? Josh Stevenson Tulsa, Boomer Sooner. What are some ways to tend to your soul while working in production? Okay. We'll take those two.
Okay.
I think hang on. Philip's up in here. It's so easy to get caught up in the work of production and making service happen. What are your go-to ways to make sure that you have a Sabbath and not just a day off?
Yeah.
Okay,
One
I've
more.
got that. I've
Those
got
are
that.
I was like, I kind of
learned that
want
the
to.
hard way.
Okay,
I think we've all learned that the hard way.
Let's sneak one more in.
One more here.
Matt asks, what are some effective strategies to manage burnout during a busy season? Well, I'm glad that none of the three of you can speak to burnout at all.
Yeah.
If you've been, the longer you're in ministry, the likely you will experience some level of this.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen, right?
Yeah.
For me, what I wasn't doing was actually resting on my days off. So you get days off, but then I fill them with other activities.
Yeah.
And some of them are fun, some of them not so much.
Right.
But at the end of the day, even though I had a day off, I didn't rest.
Yeah.
And that looks like, so for me, I have 2 days off a week. One day is a family day. We maybe do some chores, spend some time as a family. The other one is, and it works out because it's a Friday for me. So my wife is at work and my daughter's in school. So I spend the day on me. I know that seems selfish, but at the end of the day, like if I'm not pouring into myself, nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, playing off of that, one thing that I was encouraged to do, I kind of got to a point where I was a little frustrated, and I was like, I started voicing it to some leadership. I was like, if I am expected to do all these things and we have all these events, forget having a vacation. I don't even have anywhere to have an off day. And one of our lead team pastors at the church looked at me right in the eyes and he said, if you don't schedule your schedule will schedule you.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, well, there's just nothing I can say back to that. And so the practical side of that advice that he gave me was at the start of the year, sit down and plan not this year, next year. So he was like, you're already too late for this year. And he was almost kind of mean about it, but he was like, you're already too late for this year. Like you're already like, this year is what it's going to be. He was like, but right now plan a first half of year thing for next year and a second half of thing for next year. And he was like, if you don't be intentional and spend the time on yourself and keep yourself healthy, you're going to let your calendar fill up and you'll never catch up.
And the other thing is to realize that like Sundays for other people is their Sabbath. That's when they go to church and get filled up.
Right.
For us, that's work.
That's Monday.
It just is. That's what we do.
Yeah,
and so you better make sure that you're finding time to spend time in the Word, to rest, recover, to pray. Because if you're waiting for Sunday for that to happen, you're gonna have a real
You
short.
got to show up to Sunday what we tell our teams is you have to show up ready to bring people somewhere you've already gone, or else you've already missed it. If
that's it right there.
If you haven't
Yeah.
shown up ready to bring your congregation to where you've already gone personally in the word, in worship, in personal time, you've missed it already.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. To your point, you were talking about the calendar.
Yeah.
In our house, we have a phrase. It's that we calendar our priorities, but we don't prioritize the calendar.
I like that.
That's great.
That's good.
Good way to keep that focus and keep
Yeah.
that balance in there. So,
Yeah.
all right, we've got another question teed up here. Chris Esterline.
Yes.
We know
Chris.
Chris.
Hey. Currently Disney
in
World.
Disney World.
Well, thanks for that, Chris.
Awesome, man. How do you keep your skills sharp and balance, not burning out? As part of that, what are your thoughts on freelance work and its value? So how do you continue to grow in your craft and grow in your skills, but not allow your days off to be those days that you're doing it?
I mean, I don't always do that great, but I try. So I'm coming off of a freelance project right now, and I'm more tired than I wish I would have been, candidly. So I've got some learning to do there. But I think anytime you have the opportunity to step outside of your own context and be exposed to other people and other systems, and whether that's production environments outside of the church or even other churches, you have a tremendous learning opportunity there.
Yeah.
And especially if you're in a role for your church where you're expected to have a technical platform of leadership, if you're not constantly learning and growing, you very quickly become the lid for your organization's growth.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, I've worked very hard over the years because it's very comfortable to just like sit in my box and go, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to grow beyond this. But to push myself out to go do a show or go visit a friend at another church, if nothing else, just to say hi. And what I've learned is every time I step outside the four walls of my organization, I learn something new. I either learn something that I want to take back and go, wow, that was really cool, I want to implement this. Or, and this happens, is I don't ever want to do that. And if I see that starting to creep into our culture or our systems, I know to squish it. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, to go off your point, it's, I've tried to be very open and very pointed with my direct report, because I mean, it is, we are in full-time ministry as well. So like, I don't want it to look like I'm competing or trying to go outside. And I think that's something that sometimes production people can struggle with, of like, what is the balance of like being at my ministry versus like trying to go out and have new experiences and learn new skills. And I've just been very plain and try to make it very clear with my boss that, hey, my heart is here.
Yeah.
My heart is with this ministry. What I am attempting to do is go out and learn and grow and try new things and see new ways to do stuff and make new contacts and meet new people. And sometimes a side benefit is to make a little extra side profit. It's like, I mean, I'm not going to hide it, but at the same time, it's like, if it ever appears to be a heart thing, if I ever miss something I should have been at, if something ever gets missed because I was doing that, please pull my leash in so fast. Like have people there. Don't trust yourself to know when you're good.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And on the freelance, I mean, I also look at it as seasons, right? Like you can't constantly be doing, at least I can't.
No,
I can't constantly be doing freelance.
Y'all
right?
don't
So
do
it's
like 2-week freelance gigs during Christmas?
Yeah, exactly. So like I know in my schedule, I have times in my year I can do that and times I can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other part is, for those of you that maybe aren't doing freelance work, you sometimes are working in your ministry, but you should also be working on your ministry. And a lot of times that can look like, for us, by going out and taking a certification, by reading a book, by developing our skills. And that's, so like for me, I schedule that as part of my work week, because if I'm not growing my technical acumen, I'm not also helping the church reach what their goal is.
Yeah, I love that.
That's great. That's great. But I think we've got one more question teed up here. Here we are. Josh, what are we doing at Infocom? Josh Stevens. So what are we doing at Infocom?
This is a way to, keep from burnout right here, right?
Oh, I'm going to be hanging out trying to hug as many people as I can.
Yeah, come shoot us a message. Because I'll be there.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there all week.
We're looking at boxes. That's our big thing.
Yeah.
New speakers.
New speakers.
Yeah.
I heard boxes and immediately pictured you standing in a room with like 30 cardboard boxes. This one's nice. And I'm like,
this one
I like
is
the
nice. This is a
sheen
nice
on this
box. This is a nice box.
So Josh, definitely send us a message if you'll be at Infocom. The four of us, will you be there?
I won't be this year. But I'll catch you guys on the next one.
The three of us.
I can't do them all.
Fair enough. Cool. Awesome. Well, guys, I hope everybody who's been watching has been able to find some value in this Thought Leader Live event. First one we've ever done. Super excited. And we will likely be doing this again, I think. I had fun. I hope you guys had fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
Awesome. So again, huge thank you, Neil, Walter, Griffin. Thank you very much.
Honor to be here.
Yeah,
Everything, guys. We really appreciate your involvement in this. I also am going to shout out, they're going to hate it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to shout out Jeff Watkins and Adrian Gonzalez, the guys who are pushing the buttons and driving the cameras and making all the magic happen behind the scenes here to make this a reality for us tonight. So with that, Daryl, I'm going to toss it back to you and let you wrap it up.
All right. That's great. Well, what an amazing conversation, fellas. You did a great job. Thanks for the questions. The questions were, substance. Are you kidding me? That was great stuff. And so I'll be honest with you. I don't know how we're going to end this thing. But what I am going to tell you is that if you haven't, you need to go check out our website, tl-connect.com. Now, our social platforms are TL_connect. Okay. So Instagram and YouTube, that's how you'll find us there on those platforms. But our website is www.tl-connect.com. Go check out, see what Mentor Circle's about. We do 2 seasons a year. We start in January. We run till about the end of May, 1st of June. And we take about 5 or 6 weeks off, and we run from the middle of July, and we end well before Thanksgiving for those of you in the U.S. So once we get in that busy Christmas and holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, we're not taking your time up, but it's really easy. It's 1 hour every other week. You get on a virtual call with people from all over the world. We have some amazing folks that obviously are here in the U.S. is probably the bulk at the moment, but we have a couple from Africa and India and a few other continents that are joining us. So it's really fun to see their perspective and learn from them, and for us to be able to invest in them as well. And so with that, I would just say thank you for participating in this event tonight. We were kind of afraid that if we showed up and no one gave questions, like we could still talk. There's no question about it. Like we could probably fill a couple hours, but really appreciate you showing up, and just pray blessings upon each of you and your ministries. And if there's anything that we can do for you, please reach out to us. And with that, we love you. God bless.